Welcome back, Steeler fans. It's another episode of the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by Corey Karbowski and Will Massasek, who you know as Bradshaw to Ben on the Steeler message boards and Accidental Zen on Twitter. I do have a sharp memory at times. So, gentlemen, Thursday, I think, went about as we thought it was going to. A very lethargic performance in the second half when we needed to generate some stops. Our run defense gave way, ended up losing by 9, I believe. So let's dive right into this. I actually thought there were some glimpses of hope. Maybe I'm one of the few people who saw that. I don't know. But in the first half, I was thinking, okay, we're like kind of rounding into form here. We're actually able to move the ball. We actually put up 14 points in one half. What is that? So but then of course my hopes were dashed when we got to the second half and we couldn't do anything. We couldn't move the ball. We didn't stop the run very well. I was right about one thing last week. David Njoku had a career day. That kid killed us. I don't know why.
Nailed that.
Yeah, I don't know why Cleveland always wants to use him against Pittsburgh and then forget about him for the rest of the year. But I mean, just very, very typical. The Steelers defense lets someone have a career day when we're down some of our top talent. So let's dive into this. Corey, what did you see on offense that kind of alludes to what I deemed as hope?
I mean, we actually got something resembling a running game. Jaylen Warren averaged 7.5 yards a carry. He had that big little shuffle pass taken off the board. I mean, he looks great. Najee, I'm not convinced that Najee's fully healthy. He just doesn't look like he has the same burst when he's in the hole. But I mean, in the first half, he was averaging 6 yards a carry. You know, we all know it slowed down in the second half, but we were actually able to move the ball on the ground, which is something we haven't seen since the exit of Le'Veon Bell, really. So, I mean, that's one good thing to take away from this game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. You know, that early success on the ground kind of opened some things up a little bit for the passing game. Mitch Trubisky had some more open throws than he's had in recent weeks. Made Cleveland kind of come down and not just sit on our receivers all game. So Will, what are your kind of takeaways from what you saw from our offense?
Well, I think there was some measure of hope from what and the things you guys mentioned are true, but I feel like Cleveland's defense is going to give a lot of teams a measure of hope this year. That was some of the worst lethargic. I mean, I guess it's a Thursday night game, probably part of the reason for this, but it's particularly against the run that they just seemed, their front seven seemed more or less disinterested early in the game, and that I think made the Steelers running game perhaps look a little better than it might against a really above average defensive front. I don't know exactly. I mean, they haven't been good stopping the run for 3 or 4 years now. They're sort of built to get the lead and then try to pass rush you to death. But they sort of like the Steelers of last year, is more or less what they have going on. But they have better interior, like their interior linebacker play was really good in the game. I thought it was a difference in the game in the second half. I thought one measure of hope was that, I mean, they still basically, the Steelers have only one guy who can really beat tight man coverage, and that's Deontay Johnson, who did it repeatedly early in that game. They seemed to be deathly afraid of letting him get over the top, despite the fact that Mitch Trubisky doesn't seem that interested in throwing it to him over the top. So playing a lot of man as they did in the first half, that seemed to open things up for both Deontay Johnson on the comebacks and stuff like that, and also for the quarterback, for Trubisky to have some room to move around, to run a little bit because of the man coverage. And it wasn't until they switched late, very, very late in the game to a zone coverage, which they don't seem to be able to play it. So to me, Cleveland's defense can't play zone and can't stop the run, which is really, really bad. That's not going to suit them well when they play a team who's really good passing game. But getting back to your positivity, the catch that George Pickens made just makes you have a glimpse at least of what the possibility is for the future. And the offensive line is at least protecting long enough to do the quick passing game that they like to do, which is something they didn't do at all last year. And if you look at the difference between last year's team and this year's team, the defense is, they have it a little bit more together. They're like an average run stopping team now, or slightly below average instead of the worst. And their pass defense is not as good as it was with Watt, but okay. But their offensive line is the biggest difference from last year to this year. The offensive line play is at least competent, and that's really a step up from last year. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Yeah, I mean, you say a step up, and everyone's probably still thinking, "What do you mean? How is that a step up?" But I think people forget how truly bad our offensive line play was last year. So I mean, I think one bright spot more than anything is I think Mason Cole has actually done a very nice job at center early in the year. I think Corey was mentioning he's PFF's top 5, like a top 5 graded offensive lineman, which, if you would have told me any Steeler offensive lineman would have been ranked in the top 20 offensive lineman, I would say, get the hell out of here. Like, there's no freaking way. But I mean, I think that's one positive, that's one signing this offseason that has kind of exceeded my expectations. Honestly, I just thought we were going to, get a guy who would be serviceable and all that. But so far he's played really good. We still haven't been able to run the ball as well as we'd like to at times. I know you mentioned Cleveland has a, bad run defense or whatever, but kind of a glimmer of hope there as well.
Something to build on,
Yeah. But let's get off this hope and positivity crap. Let's dive right into the negative part of this past game too. Man, our run defense just sucked again when we needed it to. I mean, I hate to say it, but Tyson Alualu is like stealing a game check right now. That dude
got demoted today.
Yep,
yes,
Montravius Adams.
I was about to say, I did see that, Montravius Adams was giving the starting nose tackle job, and good, because there was one play where Montravius Adams, I think, blew the center or guard so far off the ball that Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt or whatever running back they had in there at the time, he literally had nowhere to go. And we got a big, negative play, which was, especially when you can create that on early downs, it's such a big deal kind of to dictate what the offense can do at that point. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But I guess one signing that's disappointed me is the Tyson Alualu. We brought him back. I was just expecting more, I was expecting more from our entire defensive line group as a whole. I figured with us being able to stay fresher and stuff that we wouldn't see these big holes, and I understand TJ Watt's a big part of the run defense, but I mean, Corey, at some point, one of these defensive linemen has to step up and play, that defensive end spot at a high enough level to where we're just not getting gashed, late in games, and everyone knows where to go with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves Cam Hayward, but he is a guy that does benefit greatly from TJ Watt being in there. I mean, I feel like he has to play better. He has his big games when TJ's there, but for the level of player that he is, for the caliber of player that he is, I feel like you always expect a little more. Oluwala, I mean, you nailed it. It feels like he's stealing a game check. He deserved to be demoted. In spots, I feel like he can be good. He could be a great rotator. I mean, put him in for 3-4 plays. No, but he's just not a starting caliber interior D lineman, it feels like, anymore. And, I would like to see Loudermilk dressed, I feel. He was a great run stopper last year in his limited role. And he got bigger this year, he got stronger, put on more mass overall. I feel like that's a guy that could be used, especially if Oluwala's play keeps, being what it is.
Yeah, just can't really see Loudermilk not playing ahead of Wormley. I don't, Wormley, for what ails this team, I just don't understand their fascination with giving him so many snaps. So that's the guy I would target in terms of saying, oh, I could see Loudermilk eating into his snaps somewhat. Alualu, if you remember, last year he had a broken leg, which is the kind of thing that wasn't necessarily a career setback. But the previous year in 2019, they got off to this amazing start where they were playing a lot of that 5 front, and really giving, like, I remember the game against the Bengals in particular, that they just destroyed their front with making all the offensive line have one-on-one matchups. And Alualo was a big part of that. But he hurt his knee that year. He came back right away. I think he only missed a game or a game and a half or something. But when he came back, he was not the same player, and they didn't even try to use him the same way. He was there on the field and still making some plays, solidly, but he didn't have the same dynamic that he had earlier in the season. And I felt like he still didn't have it last year at the beginning of the year. Then he broke his leg. So the expectation that at his age, he was going to come back. And I say that as someone who's 20 years old and Tyson Alualo, but at his age coming back this year, there was always like, oh, he's going to come back and everything will be fine with the run game. Well, yeah, there's a bit of a risk involved there because I'm not sure that he's fully recovered from the previous injury that he had. So I'm not super surprised about that. I guess I choose to be positive about the fact that Adams played well enough that the Steelers almost never do that, mid-season suddenly like promote somebody over a veteran starter. So I feel like that's a positive about whoever's running things on the defense, that they're willing to make that change. I wish I could say the same about the edge pass rushers and Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward's been pretty much invisible. A rookie 2 weeks ago, pretty much. I mean, granted, Cole Strange is better than your average rookie, but he pretty much erased Cam Hayward in the New England game, and then pretty quiet on Thursday. I try not to read too much into the Thursday night games because I feel like the teams and the players and their approach and their practice that week and how recovered they are, like, who knows, maybe some guys were really recovered easily, and your 35-year-old defensive lineman, maybe he doesn't recover that quickly for a Thursday night game. So yeah, but I just feel like this whole the whole run defense thing it's complicated. It's not any one player. It's kind of, they're playing just sort of passive, and I get this sense that they're trying to prevent the jet sweep, the quarterback runs to the outside, the screen game to the outside, and it makes their, or even play action game, and it makes their linebackers a little bit hesitant to just be aggressive in the run game. So yes, Devin Bush is more active, and he's more involved this year in stopping the run. But I also, I was having a conversation with Corey during the game that he was getting caught in the wash a lot, but some of that is because he was just trying to like hand fight with blockers instead of just aggressively like using his leverage and his shoulder to attack. And you see the guys that are really good linebackers, run stoppers in the league, that they are just like, they don't allow themselves to be involved in a hand fighting battle for a block.
Like a hammer and a nail. Like they take the fight to the lineman.
Right. Yeah. We haven't really had those type of linebackers since, James Ferrier and Larry Foote moved on, that type of mentality where they could just go down and take on an offensive lineman. Honestly, we haven't had that since those two have, hung up their cleats for a while now, which is crazy. And time moves on for us all.
We've had a slew we've been really lucky. We've been spoiled as fans. We've had a slew of guys that were really great at that role, that downhill linebacker role. And even Vince Williams, was like, he was no nonsense in terms of, when he knew where he had to go, it didn't matter who was in his way, he would try to get there, and didn't always work, but it's better than, I think, man, allowing yourself to get into a battle where you're upright instead of having, lean, and you're not using your leverage shoulder, and you're just trying to like wash, hand fight your way through the wash, unless you're a giant and have the, legs of tree trunk legs, or you're Levon Kirkland, like you're just not going to be able to fight that way. Devin Bush is just not built to
he's like
take on
5'11".
offensive linemen. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, Devin Bush is like 5'11". I mean, that's not a guy you want taking on these 6'5" guards. He's got to get his shoulder into the stomach and ribs. Like,
yeah, right. There's a guy who you think who would have natural leverage, but he just, he's not using that. He's not getting underneath these guys. He's not driving anyone back at his size. But I mean, I think we saw James Ferrier play the position at 215, like his last year. So, I mean, that just goes to show you it's mentality more than anything. I mean, if you have that mentality of, oh, I'm going to, beat the man in front of me. I don't care what it takes, and I just don't think we haven't just,
I mean, Troy Polamalu had more of that. He played more like a linebacker than
late.
than guys like Devin Bush do. Just he was just so much more aggressive and not afraid of using his leverage and just fighting all out to try to get to the ball carrier instead of waiting for it to come to him. Like it's just I don't know, man. It's like I don't want to. He is playing better than last year, much like the offensive line. The bar was pretty low for playing better than last year, and he's definitely playing better than last year, which is I'm actually pleasantly surprised. But I still don't see we still have all kinds of problems in the middle of the field. And that's one of the reasons that David Njoku, I understand that the safety, our strong safety, was trying to cover him. But I think just in general, the middle of the field defense for the Steelers is really where the problems are. And it's been that way for a while.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up one more negative part to the defense so far. I don't think Ahkello Witherspoon has played very well this year. He's doing a lot more reaching and grabbing rather than, just running with his man like he was doing last year. When he caught fire last year and was the Steelers' best corner last year to close out the year, he was sticking with guys. He was getting his hands in front of balls and not on jerseys, aka this year. It just seems like he's just not quite ready yet. I can't pinpoint it, but he's just been caught in too many situations this year where he's like exposed. So going into this year, I thought the secondary might have a chance to be, pretty good, pretty special, with him, Sutton, signing Levi Wallace, who's been okay. He hasn't been
He's
great.
Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace.
Right. We signed a guy to be, a backup boundary corner, and he's done a decent job at that. Arthur Mallett's been a nice little surprise with the run game, but he's Mike Hilton as far as run defense, but he can't do the things that Mike Hilton did in the passing game. So, we keep trying, Cam Sutton in the slot occasionally and a slew of other guys. Minka's been as advertised. He's been playing great. I'd say the one bad game he had was this past week, but it was because Cleveland, I think, pretty much did their best to avoid him or, just run the ball and exploit all
memo.
other deficiencies. So, and Terrell Edmonds is Terrell Edmonds, just a guy that's got all this talent, but a 2-cent brain, it feels like sometimes.
I wrote down Edmonds is who he is. So it's pretty funny. That's just what you put out there.
I would say he's matchup dependent,
right.
The right kind of matchup. And he plays pretty solidly. And if you get into a matchup that's a bad matchup for him, he just can't get out of it. He can't figure out a way to alter his play or approach to try to get by in a game where he doesn't have his the best matchup. That's the thing. It's like there's just some guys, you play long enough, you're going to play against a guy that you just don't, for some reason, you don't read him well, or you don't match up with him physically well or something. And it feels like when he gets into that kind of matchup, it just turns into a nightmare like it did Thursday.
Right.
Rather than, him being able to adjust and say, oh, well, let me try this instead. It's kind of like if you're a pass rusher and you're, when James Harrison was rushing against, what's his name at the Browns? Joe
Thomas.
Joe Thomas.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, my normal shtick doesn't work with him. So I better try this, or maybe I'll try this, or maybe I'll do this. And it's like, it's not always going to work very well because the guy's talented, but you just can't trot out your same tired move over and over again against him and expect it to work. So I feel like that's where Edmonds is. I don't know, guys. It's like, I feel like this very similar about the offense and the defense. If you need Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, and a great offensive line to make your offense work, and Martavis Bryant or whatever, right? Or you need TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward to make your defense work, then you're not trying hard enough. I just feel like that's a real red flag for me that they just seem to just become so mediocre. The Steelers defense just feels like they can't get off the field now, which a bad trait to have in a defense.
So, Will, that's a good thing you bring that up. I think I read earlier today the Steelers defense has played the most defensive snaps of any team by I think almost 60 snaps. They've played 257 defensive snaps through 3 weeks. That's just ridiculous. They're averaging over 80 snaps on defense. I mean, a game. Good God.
They had 99 in the overtime game, which
Yeah.
was one shy of like
A
the
record.
top guys had 99. And I think 100 was the top number of snaps that any defender had in like since they've been tracking snaps.
Right.
So yeah, that's not a good. I mean, and to me, it's not only is your offense can't stay on the field, but your defense is just giving up drips and drabs down the field, and there's just like these 10, 11 play drives. It just feels like they're just built to give up 10 and 11 play drives right now, unless they get a turnover or like can string together a couple of negative plays. But that's just.
But no TJ Watt.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't if you need TJ Watt to not be able to to be able to get off the field, like you're not a very good defense,
Yeah.
And the offense, if you need Ben Roethlisberger to bring you back in the fourth quarter, something with your offensive plan isn't very good,
Yeah, we're going to dive into more about the offense here in a sec. But one last thing I'll say about the defense. Can anyone tell me who's leading the league in sacks through 3 weeks?
Alex Highsmith.
Yeah, shockingly
Does he
enough.
get more than Parsons? No, I thought Parsons got a half last night too.
I think it was. They might be tied then, but I think I saw that like this morning.
Oh, Will, I hope you didn't just crash my stat there. But I was totally ready with that one.
Oh, look, I'll be ready. That's pretty good though. Yeah, I knew that. I mean, here's a question. I'll sort of turn it around on you. Do you think since TJ Watt left the game, do you think Alex Highsmith has looked like the league leader in sacks?
No.
No.
Personally, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, and I'm actually really happy for him that he's gotten off to such a good start, and he looks like he's worked really hard. And like I would never question his work ethic or the fact that he's gotten better. Like all of that, I think is really like that's fantastic, right? But yeah, I mean, he looks like he's on pace to get a double-digit sack season, but I'm on record as saying that I didn't think he would ever get there, at least not in 16 games. But maybe he's going to be better than that. But right now, it looks like he's really the fact that he's had to sort of step up and be the primary edge rusher does not seem to be sitting very well with him. But that's small sample size.
No, I agree. I was going to follow that stat up with stats don't always tell the whole story. So
Yeah.
So a little bit of a high and a little bit of a low there, but it is what it is. So guys, how many Steelers have to sign a petition to get Matt Canada fired? It seems like everyone's lining up or whatever. Mason Cole didn't come out and say that, but he certainly wondered why they went to less no huddle in the second half that they did in the first after they were so successful with it. Multiple players have come out and said they don't like Canada's offense. I mean, what is it going to take? I mean, are the players just going to have to go to practice and like sit on their hands for a full practice for Mike and this organization to get the picture? I mean, what's the deal? Were we going to, have a shut in on the practice field? I mean, we'll let you start.
I thought you were going to let Corey take that one. I mean, you know the answer to this question. How long is Mike Tomlin going to be the coach? Like I'm not convinced that Matt Canada is doing anything that the head coach doesn't want him to do. I mean, he's doing a poor job of even that, but I do think he's doing generally what the coach wants to do. They want to completely eliminate risk from their offensive plan. They don't care if it costs them points. They are convinced that they have a good enough defense that if they play risk-free, fundamental football and offense, that they will get enough points that their defense can make it hold up. And that is, they're so convinced of that I think it would require maybe, like completely tanking for multiple seasons before they would admit that wasn't true. And I mean, I think what we're headed for is Kenny Pickett's going to come in and he's polished and he's a degree, bolder than Trubisky is, and he could operate the same offense and probably have better output with it for a while till the league sort of gets tape on him and figures him out.
Right.
So I think I think we're stuck with this. I think the players are stuck with Matt Canada, and I think we're stuck with Matt Canada. And I think that more importantly, it's longer term than even Matt Canada. Even if they replace him, we're on a run now where with each offensive coordinator, he gets a little more entrenched in the Mike Tomlin method of, the risk aversion. So I have no reason to believe that the next guy that comes in is going to suddenly make it better.
Yeah, Corey, what do you think on this as well? The
one thing that
open revolt from the players seems like
one thing that I'm a little curious about is how much is being said behind closed doors before this goes out and to the reporters, because the Steelers do not have an old offense whatsoever. I mean, you've got Mason Cole and Mitchell Trubisky, and those are the only guys on James Daniels. Those are the only guys on second contracts.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson just hit it, but there are not veterans on the Steelers offense. So I feel like it's a much bigger issue if what they're saying is being said behind closed doors and they're being ignored. And that's why they're feeling they have to go out to the press. Mm-hmm. But I do have a bit of a suspicion that just because it's such a young group that this might be the first time it's coming out. Like they might just keep their mouths shut in the meetings. And then now that, we're after a horrible Thursday night football game, now they're finally coming out to the press. But I feel like that's something that we won't know, but I feel like that makes the situation much more severe if they are in fact going to Canada, telling them this stuff and feel like they're being ignored. So now they have to go to the press.
Yeah. I mean, Corey, that's a great point because your generation and, for the lack of a better term, my generation, I'm not as old as I'd like people to think, but our generation has this tendency to kind of keep their mouth shut, but then kind of shoot it off when they get a chance, and this social media craze has allowed that, to become even more prevalent in today's society, and not necessarily a bad thing, not necessarily a good thing either. Social media has its up and downs or whatever, but it's pretty clear that the players have felt like it's an avenue to voice their displeasure if it's not getting heard, behind closed doors. So I think that's a very good point you bring up. That they've been raised in the day and age where it's like, well, if you're not happy about something, tweet about it.
There's only one vote that matters, Jeremy.
Yeah, the head coach's vote. Yeah.
In this situation, that the fans don't matter. And in fact, maybe it's even the owner. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe they gave him when Tomlin got hired, they gave him a mandate. They were like, we play Steeler football. This is what we do. We run the football, and we, play good defense. And if you can't figure out a way to build your team around that, then we'll find somebody else. But if you do that, you'll have winning seasons as long as you have a, Hall of Fame quarterback. So I don't know. It's like, I don't know what will have to happen for them to bottom out, but I know we're not there yet. It's like this. I mean, just let me ask you this, guys, a question. I mean, do you see in your most optimistic mindset that you can come up with them ending up better than 2-5 at the bye? I mean, could they get a third win somewhere in there? Like that seems crazy.
When's the next special teams touchdown?
Damn, Corey.
How many did they have? Did they have 2 last year? I think they had 2, right?
Yeah, but worse offense this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
one thing I think is, Tomlin is a player's coach. I feel like if enough players come out openly against Canada, that might prompt him to do something though, because he's loved by the players for a reason, but I feel like the players, if it comes to a certain point, will come over Canada.
They just don't have another guy to go to that's like an obvious choice. It's not like there's somebody waiting in the wings there for Canada to fail. And Tomlin apparently, like he had Canada on his radar for like 3 years before they hired him. So
of course he did. He was at Maryland with his damn son. Sorry.
Well, he was in the building.
Dino.
Well, first of all, he was in the building, and then he was at Maryland.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so it's, but still, it's like he pursued this guy. So, you know, I'm just not sure that he's going to be that quick to. It's not like it was somebody that was foisted upon him, and he's like, "Look, man, you know, we got to get rid of this guy." It's like he doesn't seem to be readily a person who will publicly show that he feels like he made a mistake. It just doesn't. It's not his thing.
Yeah, pride cometh before the fall, I believe is the popular phrase.
I just don't.
that
I
has
mean,
been-
it's been a while since we've seen this team in the territory of 6-10 or worse, right? So they have a solid chance at that this year, I think. I mean, like I said, I think if Kenny Pickett comes in, as much as I'm not necessarily a believer that he's going to be the savior for all time, I think he could very easily have a sort of a beginner's run, you know, before he gets broken, before the league breaks him down, literally and figuratively. I think they could get on a little roll. TJ Watt is healthy. The defense plays out of its mind, and Kenny Pickett is, you know, aggressive and courageous for 5-6 games. You know, like they could have a nice little run. It's like he's kind of like, you know, he would have almost feel like he had nothing to lose if they're bad enough when he comes in. But barring that, I think they're going to struggle to get to 6 wins, and we don't really know what that environment looks like in Pittsburgh. Like a 4-win Steelers team, oh my God, like would heads would roll, or would they just, you know, continue business as usual? It's hard to say. They're selling. We have this great defense, and we have all these star players signed, and we have the defensive player of the year, and Cameron Hayward, and you know, Mika Fitzpatrick signed forever, and we have you know, weapons on offense and blah blah blah, and then the team ends up with 4 wins. You know, they're 4-13. How is that? You know, what happens in the off season? Like, I don't even know. It's been a long time.
right. I mean, no, I felt you made a good point. You know, the buck starts and stops with Mike Tomlin. I actually think this has been a problem that goes above Mike Tomlin. I think ever since Dan Rooney passed, you know, and Art has started to run the show, it just the ship isn't quite as squeaky clean. I feel like there's messes that have been tolerated, you know, the Antonio Brown situation, you know, how much really went on behind closed doors there that we don't know about, you know, while we were winning. But just in general, I feel like Art Rooney has taken a little bit more of a laissez-faire approach, you know, as to where Dan Rooney was more, you know, my voice is going to be heard and everyone's going to respect it. And, Art's not the same guy his dad was, you know, so I think it starts up there, you know, and I went as far as I called Mike Tomlin the problem on a different podcast that I'm a part of earlier this week, and went on quite a rant that we've kind of already divulged into here. But at some point, Mike's got to look in the mirror and say, we are here because of the decisions I have made. You know, where is the accountability factor that just seems totally lost in this organization in general right now? There just doesn't seem to be any accountability for the results and for the situations we're in. I think we're over the last 3 years, we've had 2 different wide receivers coaches, 2 different offensive line coaches. We hired an offensive coordinator.
3 offensive line coaches.
I was about to say, it's actually 3. Yeah, good point.
And by the way, Alex Highsmith is leading the league in sacks. He has half.
Yes, I knew I was.
Yes. For now.
Yeah. Well, Myles Garrett isn't exactly going to catch him.
Half sacks through 3 games. Hey, kudos, man. I'm glad he got
Yeah.
there.
Good.
Imagine what they'd be without him, you know.
Don't even go there, man.
Eric Tuska.
Re-signed Derek Tuska. I don't even think he's on the roster. 50 or
I think he just got waived. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't even think he's an option.
Yeah, I just don't. It's going to be an interesting story to follow. I just don't know what gets this team. They won't get in panic mode. You know, they turn like an oil tanker at sea. That's what I always say. Like, that's The Steelers will eventually get to the pointing in the right direction, but it just might take them a long time to get there. So I don't think they'll panic in season, and they probably won't even make a change from Canada in season, for instance, or maybe even the quarterback. They could go the whole season without playing Pickett. Imagine that. Imagine this team having three wins 2 months into the season, and having Kenny Pickett on the bench, for another 3 months. But I'm actually, I think they're headed for a place that you guys don't even remember at all. Like, what's the worst Steelers team that you remember, Corey?
Duck Hodges.
Yeah, I have.
That thing was 500.
Yeah.
I know. I mean,
and Duck Hodges was for a couple of games was better than the guy he replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, I became a Steelers fan when Antoine Randall L got drafted to be a Steeler. He's a Hoosier, I'm a Hoosier. So I saw his last game at IU and I was like, man, this is something I got to get into. And now I'm, of course, the brainiac child that I am. It's football all the time, every day, 365.
One thing I'd want to say, and because me and Will, we weren't real thrilled about the Kenny Pickett draft, but they took the team in the direction they are going to go for the next 5 years when they drafted him, because me and Will were a fan of waiting on this QB class, and it's looking pretty good, but you're not going to outscore the Bills. You're not going to outscore the Chiefs unless you have a quarterback like that. So when they took Pickett, I think they signed on to being kind of what they look like now, where they want to control the ball. They want to play good D. So I think we're going to be looking at this kind of brand of football for 6 or 7 years, because that's how they think they're going to be able to beat those explosive offenses.
So we're going to go to the offensive strategy is if we hold the ball the longest, the best quarterbacks can't be on the field as much. Is that the, attack you think we're going to?
I think so, and I think it's actually a fair idea, because I don't think we can outscore the Bills. But
it doesn't work. Like a guy like Mahomes, like it does it, or even Peyton Manning back in the day, like it's proven that it doesn't work. You can try that if you want, but all that usually ends up doing for you is getting you 2 touchdowns behind. So It's like when they do get the ball, they roll right down the field, and then you're stuck because you're in this mode of like trying to suck the clock down instead of trying to score. I feel like the NFL is, that it's really become risk averse, because it's so drilled into the coaches' heads that if they can't overcome mistakes, so they're not willing to take any chances. But the teams that have great quarterbacks don't play that way, and their outcomes are different. If they're behind, it doesn't matter to them. They just keep going. That's one of the reasons I really like. I maybe have more admiration for the Dolphins right now than anybody, because they don't have an elite quarterback, but yet he's a new coach. He's playing as if he does. They don't hold back. Like, they're trying to score. That's their goal. Their goal is not time of possession, or getting to third down. They're trying to score on first and second down. So I admire that approach, because I feel like it's way more sustainable than trying to depend on your offense to get to third down and short, and then convert third down, and then do it again and again and again just to move down the field, right? It's like it's just too hard in the NFL to do that consistently without a penalty or a drop, or getting stuffed on a run play or a sack, and just throws your whole offense out of kilter. Whereas if you're in attack mode all the time, you can make mistakes and have time to overcome them. You just don't make your mistakes in the late in the fourth quarter, and you're good. But I feel like the Steelers are definitely married to this idea that they can somehow win by shortening the game. But I think all that's really done for them is, you remember the Patriots games of the last decade and a half are just, the Patriots just keep trying to score. Like, they're aggressive. They keep piling up points. And before you know it, you're so far behind that you can't, there's nothing you can do when you're 3 touchdowns behind to Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, dare I say it, and I didn't really ever feel this way until we kind of started talking about it. But Mike Tomlin's old now. He's 50, and you have all these other young coaches coming into the league that are playing more fearlessly with the ball. I mean, Sean McVay's a young coach. Kevin O'Connell's a young coach. You see all these young
Brandon
coaches come
Staley.
in this league now with aggressive mindsets. And I hate to say it, but I think Mike Tomlin's looking old. And who would ever thought about that? The guy to be the youngest head coach to ever win a Super Bowl. But I mean, shit, that was 16 years ago now. He's 50 this year. Who would have thought? But I mean, it just kind of goes to show you where it's like maybe Mike Tomlin's, not quite keeping up with the times a little bit there. But
definitely you can see that if you watch all the NFL games, you can definitely tell the teams and coaches that are entrenched in the past way of thinking and those that are sort of fit more in the modern game. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years. But it's sort of like, it reminds me a little bit of when the 49ers in the 80s, before you guys were born. But when they came, Bill Walsh just started playing, and before him, the coach in Cincinnati that Bill Walsh came out of that tree, that they started playing the game differently than, the 3 yards in the clock, run and try to make a play on third down offense. That was so popular before that. And it suddenly within 4 or 5 years of the time that the 49ers changed the style, then everybody was playing that way, so it didn't take long for people to come around to that. But, I don't know how many dinosaur teams are going to be left in 5 years. The Steelers will be one of them, though. I just about guarantee it. I mean, unless they get a different coach, the way the Steelers got out of that old time thinking was, they got Cowher came in and at some point brought in Chan Gailey, and suddenly they were doing something different than was expected of them. But it's going to be a while, I think, before that happens here.
Yeah, to quote Billy Bean, adapt or die. And it feels like we're just on the branch that is slowly decaying and withering here. So hopefully can get some more sunlight on that branch and actually start to look like a respectable football team here soon. But
can I make just one last note on what I was saying earlier about the record?
Sure.
I just looked it up to confirm what I thought was true. The Steelers, the last time the Steelers were worse than 5-11, meaning if they went 5-12 this year, that would be their worst record since 1969.
Good Lord.
They've never been worse than 5-11, and they've only been 5-11 a couple of times since then. So, it's like something worse than 6 wins this season would be an amazing show of futility when you think about it.
Yeah, I just missed out on that year.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Just barely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure you did.
They were 1-13 that year. Right. So yeah.
Ooh.
That's painful. Right.
So mentioning a record, that there's actually a game this week that we should probably start talking about, or we might be here for 2 hours tonight. We get the New York Jets at home. And luckily they're a team that's pretty beat up on their offensive line. We might actually have some opportunity there. Corey, I'll let you start there. What do you think of the upcoming nemesis foe / team in the Jets this week?
I think there's a chance that Alex Highsmith could look like TJ Watt this week. The Jets are missing their top 3 offensive tackles from preseason. Dwayne Brown, Mekhi Becton, and George Fant just got placed on IR today. They're starting Max Mitchell, who's been good in run blocking, but in pass protection, and Conor McDermott, who's been a long time backup. Conor McDermott's one of those guys with kind of heavier feet. He's 6'8", he's a big guy. That's a guy that Highsmith could really, if he really can string moves together. I mean, he has that inside spin that's been, outstanding for him since he got drafted. He could have another 2-3 sack week, and I think we'll need it if we want to win. I mean, that's how this team operates now. We need outstanding individual defensive performances, but I feel like that's really a place that the Steelers can puncture the Jets at.
Gotcha. So obviously you're highlighting our edge rushers there against their offensive tackles.
Edge rusher, one of them.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. The one edge rusher that we have. You should be able to I would think he'd have some pretty good success against Conor McDermott, like you said, he's just a little more twitch to McDermott. So I'm hoping that's a favorable matchup. Will, what do you think is a matchup we should watch for this week as we get the Jets?
Well, I think the Jets defense is terrible, right? That's really where their problems are right now. Like they could make our offense look really like there's a chance. It's not necessarily a big chance. If I think if the Steelers sort of played their cards right, they could put up 30, which would be stunning for this team. But I think that would require a little different, more aggressive mindset. Maybe they will have that aggressive mindset because they're playing at home and they're playing a team that they feel confident against. But they have an awful time coming out of the bye playing against a team that they think they're better than over the last few years. Just give you some really nightmarish kind of memories. I mean, that sounds like a formula for it's going to take us a little while to get going, which I think if the Jets are kind of like the first couple of weeks of the season when they smelled blood, they actually played pretty well for a little while. I just feel like there's hay to be made by being aggressive on offense against this team. More, I don't know. I'm gonna pick out a stat for you here and tell you that what they're actually decent at on defense is run defense. And you look at their front with Quinn Williams and Sheldon Rankins, like you can see they're pretty stout in the interior. So what I fear is that the Steelers are going to come out and try to run the ball up the gut. It's like find the one thing that the other team does well and prove your mentality is superior by taking them on at that, right? So I think if the Steelers come out and attack the guys on this defense that are not named Sauce Gardner in coverage, that they have a pretty good chance to be successful. But yeah, I've seen this movie. Like I do think the Steelers are, should be favored in this game and likely will win this game. They need to. It's like a must win for them, really. If they want to have any kind of season. But yeah, the Steelers passing offense, spreading the ball around and really being more aggressive in their pass offense, I think is one of the keys to this game.
I agree. We highlighted our edge rusher that might have success this weekend. I actually think our offensive tackles match up well against the Jets edge defenders. Dan Moore's likely going to be getting John Franklin Myers and Jacob Martin on his side. Core 4 is going to be getting Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson. I think that's the matchup I worry about a little bit more, just because Carl Lawson, kind of a heavy-handed guy. He's not afraid to just push you straight back. He's got a nice bull rush. And then Jermaine Johnson, one of the Jets the Jets' last first-round pick this year. He's got some juice. I really liked him coming out. So, I think he's a guy that could give a core 4 some problems just because he plays like, his hair's on fire a lot of the times. But I think that's a matchup that, dare I say it, Pittsburgh might actually do okay with this week. So they need to make sure that they actually take advantage of that, in both the run and pass game. Hopefully they do that. Offensively, and I think I'm going to say this every week. I think their running backs against our linebackers in open space is an issue. I was a huge fan of Michael Carter coming out of North Carolina 2 years ago, and he is the type of running back that gives our defense absolute fits with his ability to run the ball hard, but also catch it out of the backfield and turn nothing into something. And then Breece Hall's looked much better, as the season's progressed. Even him out of the backfield, he's the real bowling ball of it. He's a guy who runs a 4.4 at 230, 6'2". It's like, he's bigger than most of our inside linebackers, period. So I'm just worried about, our guys holding up in coverage if, we're going to be asking them to, go track down the running backs on the passing game a little bit. So
And
are there?
speaking of putting the backers in, them putting our backers in coverage, I think that's really what the approach that the Steelers will need to do is to figure out how to align themselves pre-snap to keep the interior linebackers, off-ball linebackers for the Jets from blitzing. I think there's the kind of guys that are better blitzing and being able to like come downhill than they are covering guys in space. So I think you got to do something that's unnatural for the Steelers right now, which is to kind of spread the field more or to like, move guys out of the box because they seem to like to bring guys into the box. But a guy like CJ Mosley, I want to put him, when he's in the game in their base defense, I want to try to get him out of thinking he can come straight downhill or blitz or whatever, and is going to be able to get away with that. I don't know. Like, I think that's definitely something, a criticism I have of the Steelers offense for quite a long time now, is that they don't seem to like to use formations to manipulate the defense. They like to use formations to get into things that they're comfortable doing. And I'm not sure the merits of that. I know Corey's somebody that notices this all the time, so he's going to want to talk about it.
I think your kind of view on the Jets, I feel like you're just being way too optimistic, Will, which is something crazy coming from you, because I feel like you said, attacking everyone that's not Sauce Gardner, because I agree. I don't think their safeties are very good in coverage, and I don't think Quan Alexander can move, but he has a tendency to get beaten routes. He's kind of like Edmonds, good athlete, but just, something in the coverage just doesn't click. But that's going to require us to attack the middle of the field. You stop guys from blitzing by attacking the middle of the field. You attack safeties by seams, sails, corners. You got to get those guys. Like, those are not routes we throw. We throw comebacks, screens, and pitches. Like,
I feel like we haven't run a sail route since like 2018.
Yeah, what's a sail route?
No, I don't. I don't think Antonio Brown used to run them.
Yeah. The other thing we don't run is arrow concept, where you have a guy or two running deep, and then you bring the slot guy, runs an out underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's another thing. We also don't do that to the middle. I forget there's a name for that, to the middle.
A dagger.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing where you have somebody running a post.
Clear outs. We don't do
a post and a over from opposite sides of the field, and it challenges the safety. If he comes down to cover the thing, then he leaves somebody behind him, and if he drops back, you have a nice easy throw in the middle of the field. Yeah, these things like are really basic offensive concepts, but they're like, when you only run 9 plays and those are not, you don't want to risk the middle of the field, then and maybe with Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback, not risking the middle of the field is wise, because if pretty iffy when he throws to the middle.
I think the issue towards like the last few years was that we never had the protection for a lot of those with Ben, because Ben used to love throwing those.
Yep.
Now I think we have the protection for it. I just don't think we have the QB. I'm dying to see Kenny Pickett in, because I know regardless, he's probably going to want to rip it. Like that's who he was in college. He's going to throw the ball. And that's just what I feel like we're lacking.
Yeah. Tell a young guy he can't do something, and, he's going to try to prove you wrong most of the time. So,
yeah, like I said, I feel like he's going to have a sort of a honeymoon period, no matter if he's going to end up being great or not. I think chances are this situation shapes up well for him. The expectations, like him coming in, the crowd will be totally behind him for a variety of reasons. And they'll overlook some mistakes if he makes them early. And, they'll really be, it'll really be a sort of a comfortable situation for him in a way. And it's just that, when teams start to figure you out a little bit, you either adjust to that and you become great, or you never quite overcome it. And it's like, that's the thing with quarterbacks. You don't know till they're out there. That's why I advocate, even with a guy that wasn't 100% behind the pick, I advocate putting them on the field immediately, because I want to know, I want to find out about that part of his game. How does it look in real NFL conditions? How does he deal with adversity? How does he do when it's late in the game and you need to play and he can't just go on script? Like, that's the thing with Trubisky. If all you had to do always was just throw on time and be on script, He's a satisfactory quarterback to do that stuff, and he can buy a little time with his legs and whatever. But if you want somebody, you need a play late in the game. You could make the list right now in your head and rank quarterbacks based on who you would want to make a play for when you absolutely need a play. It's 3rd and 14 and you're desperate to get a first down. There's just, there's only so many guys that aren't going to dump it off to their running back.
Yeah.
In the NFL,
Yeah, you make a good point there, Will. Being in Indiana, I have a decent amount of friends that are Bears fans. It's just the reality of it. And, when they had Trubisky, they said, Trubisky was really good when you only forced him to read half the field. But the moment you ask him to do more than that is when he rushes things. He doesn't see the field. I mean, God, there's been a few throws this year where I think he's thrown into triple coverage a few times because it's just like he just doesn't see the guy there, So, I mean, that's another reason, I wanted Pickett to start this week was, we have a longer week to get him prepared against a subpar Jets team. This would have been the perfect week to get him off the training wheels. But, we're, stuck in our ways. The standard is the standard. We're going to do whatever the hell we want to do and not really care about the consequences.
We're going to say how we're always aggressive on offense and that we're play to win and, but yet never do any of those things really.
Yeah. And we don't live in our fears.
We don't live in our fears. But we do.
That's always my favorite one. And we don't live in our fears.
We're like just being gaslit. It's hard to be gaslit all the time.
Right.
It's frustrating.
It's tough.
Start to believe it.
You totally start to believe it. Yeah.
So, but believe it or not, Pittsburgh's not the only game happening this week. So, yeah.
I think one thing, Zach Wilson's first game back. I feel like that deserves at least a mention.
Yeah.
That's true. I think we could do some things on defense that confuses a young signal caller, coming back off a knee injury where, he may not be as mobile, as he once was. So maybe if we can keep him in the pocket and force him to stay there, make some tougher throws, I think the Jets offense could have a long day regardless. But if we do that and force him to make plays from the pocket, I think that bodes well for us. What do you guys think?
Well,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I felt like Joe Flacco was a perfect backup quarterback, really good for 2 games, because that's their job.
Right.
Come in for a week or two if we need you and when it's, be respectable for a couple of games. And it's understandable that his play, would sort of drop off after that. I don't know. Zach Wilson, I don't know. He wasn't enough. He wasn't good enough before he got hurt to make you think that you're worried about him coming back in. Right. So maybe he's got, on paper, he's got more skills than Joe Flacco has. So maybe he can give the defense something to worry about a little bit, use his legs some. But I just don't feel like, I don't know. The Jets are like a team that has parts, but they just don't have it. Somehow they don't all work together. And one of the big
sounds like another team.
Yeah, but one of the big and similarly, one of the big problems is quarterback play. It's like, you put a really good quarterback on the Jets right now, like a really good quarterback. Justin Herbert's on the Jets. They're pretty good. Maybe they're not top 5 in the league or whatever, but they're at least a tough out every week. So I just don't know. I like Zach Wilson in a vacuum. I don't feel like his career has really gotten off to a very promising start, but every once in a while, he's had a couple of good games. So yeah, you give him time and he feels like he's comfortable. I mean, that's the thing we talked about Keller Witherspoon earlier. The difference between our Keller Witherspoon last year and this year is that the pass rush isn't ridiculous, so he's not only forced to cover for longer, he knows it at the beginning of the play. So he's got to play differently than, if you're playing behind a blitz, you're just trying to dissuade the throw more than, oh my God, I got to be in perfect position and get my head turned around and try to take the ball away because otherwise I'm going to get beat. When you're playing against, your team is blitzing and the quarterback's not going to have time. You're just trying to get a good release and be in position and make them think it's not worth throwing. And if you give quarterbacks time at an NFL level, no matter how bad they are, Jacoby Brissett, they're going to make plays because they have enough time to think about it and make the throw. So what I worry about is if a pass rush is again mediocre this week against a Jets offensive line that is generally turnstile-ish, then, by the way, I think I just made up that word.
I know what you mean.
I think that's that's where the game could go south. If the Steelers can't really put some pressure on Zach Wilson, then all bets are off, for what could happen in this game.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather go against Zach Wilson than Joe Flacco. Like, I think Zach Wilson's talented, but for one, Joe Flacco would have been licking his chops to, try and beat the Steelers on his going out game.
I know, and maybe he still will. Are we certain that Zach Wilson is going to return?
I saw the reports today that this is Zach Wilson's return game.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
And
I sort of feel bad that they're not letting Joe Flacco have that moment. He wants it.
But I feel like Zach Wilson, watching him last year play, just kind of felt like he would go through moments where he's like, okay, let's be safe with the ball. Let's not do anything. And then it's like a switch would be flipped. And he's like, I don't care who I'm throwing against. I'm just going to let this ball fly, for better or worse. Sometimes burned him, sometimes was good. But I would rather go against that than a vengeful Joe Flacco where Zach Wilson might test Minka up the middle. He might, try Garrett Wilson on Akella Witherspoon, which isn't a great size matchup on a fade route. Like, he might make those throws. So I actually prefer the Zach Wilson matchup.
No.
I will say I have to disagree with you there. I would have much rather gone against Joe Flacco. I love the idea of statue Joe Flacco back there behind Conor freaking McDermott and pass protection. I don't know about you guys, but I think a mobile target is much harder to tackle and get a hold of, as where I think Flacco could have just been standing there all day long. We could have just sent blitz after blitz after blitz and likely gotten to him, as where Wilson can probably, get out of some of those. I'm not saying he's going to get out of most of them or some of them, but I like I'd much rather have my sights set on Joe Flacco, a 40-year-old Joe Flacco, or
listen, man, if Joe Flacco comes in relief in this game and takes the Steelers down, he's going to do a victory lap like Ben did last year. He might retire on the spot and just wave and walk out with the number 1 sign into the dugout and never play again. That would really be something, man.
Yeah, that would be the true cake or whatever. But like I said, there are some other games happening this week. Some kind of shocking results from last week too. It's hard for me to believe that there are so many offenses they can't find a way to move the ball. Yes, I'm looking at you, San Fran and Denver. I don't know what's wrong with you guys right now. I, for one, watched that Giants-Dallas game the other night. Boy, did Matt Canada take a page out of Kellen Moore's book, though? Kellen Moore has called pretty good games for who is it? Cooper Rush. He, and made him look like a pretty credible quarterback in this league.
By the way, I think I had Cooper Rush 3rd in that draft class. And I think he's lived up to the billing. I've forgotten who else is in the class.
He might thinking about it now, I think you're right.
Probably that might not be saying much looking back, but
anyway, yeah, he's like he calls a good game for his backup, but then when they get back Dak, I don't know. Are we gonna talk about Dallas game now?
No, we don't have to actually talk about it.
Just all I want to know is, can you explain why Tony Pollard is not starting over Zeke Elliott? That's the only question.
The Steelers' mindset of pass protection.
And one's getting paid a lot more.
There's your reason.
I think that's the biggest reason behind that too. But Corey, you're probably not far off there either. But with that being said, we do have some interesting games this week. For the shotgun start this week, we have Miami visiting Cincinnati. And I have to think, Cincinnati right now, they're favored by 4. And I have to think part of that is because we don't know whether Tua is going to play or not. Because I think if Tua doesn't play, I think that's a more accurate line. But at the same time, Miami's been very good so far this season. Their defense has made it tough on offenses, and that's the one thing Cincinnati has had troubles with: defenses that make their offense not look good. Congratulations, you look good against the Jets. Even though I'd be happy if we put up 75% of that output against the Jets this week, but that's not the point. So like I said, the line is Cincinnati favored by 4. We're going to swing it out to Corey first. What is your take?
I think I'm going to go Dolphins here because Tyreek Hill has had that Eli Apple matchup circled for months now, probably 7, 8 months. And Tyreek Hill is one of those guys that's just, he's kind of a game breaker, which is, I don't know why the Chiefs let go of him so easily. That was kind of mind boggling. I would have given him a blank check, but he's one of those guys who can really break a game, and he's a top 5 receiver. I think he goes off for a massive game this week. When you see these elite guys get ready for a game, pretty often they have huge games. So I think it's one of those like 182 touchdown games for Tyreek Hill, regardless of who's throwing him the ball. I think the Dolphins win 7 points by touchdown.
Okay. All right. So you're taking Miami to not only cover, but win outright. So Will, what say you, sir?
I would say safer is to bet Miami for a backdoor cover, especially without Tua. Not that I think Tua is elite, but they look like they couldn't do anything Bridgewater was in. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't look like the same team. In addition to that, I just feel like Cincinnati is the desperation is creeping in a little bit with the Bengals. I think they feel like they got to get it together now. And it feels like a sort of a get well game for them because got to be a letdown game for the Dolphins. That was maybe their biggest win they've had in several years last week. And it was a game that they earned it, but you wouldn't say they're necessarily a better team than Buffalo. So I feel like they stole one a little bit and there's going to be a sort of a natural letdown after that. So I'll take Miami in the points, but maybe Cincinnati to win a close game. I don't know why the Bengals, I think they're going to get it together, but I suspect that they'll be better than they looked like when they played the Steelers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm in between both of you guys. This is why I definitely put this game up. I think this is a very close game, kind of a down the wire game. And at the end of it, I'm going to go with Miami because their defense has just looked so much better as to where, Cincinnati's has struggled a little bit at times, outside of Hendrickson, they don't really have a great pass rush. Hubbard's a great, try hard guy, and you gotta love those type of players. But I just don't see enough difference makers on defense, whether it's Tua or Teddy Bridgewater, because Teddy Bridgewater is more than capable of distributing the ball and making plays, especially being fully healthy coming off the bench potentially. This just has a feel for a game, especially on a short week too. After Miami just got a big win with that momentum, and Bengals kind of a little bit of a cakewalk with the Jets. So I just think Miami's going to come in a little sharper and outright win this. So I'm going to take Miami to win outright as well with Corey on this one. As we go down the board, there are quite a few games that we don't need to talk about at all. It just seems like there's going to be some more ugly ass football played on Sunday this week. But next game that's a big one on the list is Buffalo heading to Baltimore. This is a big matchup too. We just talked about it. Miami kind of stealing a win from Baltimore. Hard fought game. Definitely not one of the best games from Josh Allen or Ken Dorsey, his offensive coordinator. By the way, that was an epic meltdown on public television. That looked like a toddler right there. I'm not going to lie. But Will, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts on this one? And Buffalo right now is favored by 4 going into Baltimore.
Buffalo could be favored by 14. I'd still take them. I take the over and Buffalo. Baltimore's defense on the back end. Oh my God, they've been bad. So I feel like both teams could put up some points, but I trust Buffalo's defense a little bit more. And it's sort of a revenge game for Buffalo. They're going to take it out on the Ravens, I think, this week.
Gotcha, Corey. What's your thoughts, sir?
I think it'll be a close shootout, but I think it's going to be the Bills too. I think they're the best team in the NFL. I think that they're going to come back off a bad divisional loss. These teams bounce back. The good teams bounce back. And I think the Ravens have a great offense. But I think they have a horrible defense, and I think the Bills will just outpace them a little bit. I think it'll be a shootout. I think both teams are probably in the 30s, but I think the Bills get a narrow win.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually think the Bills kind of blow them out. I'm kind of more with Will on this one. I think after such a disappointing game this past Sunday where Josh Allen literally skipped a ball to an open receiver for what would have been a go-ahead touchdown. I saw that live and just couldn't believe it. I was like, man, I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback more upset with himself on that. The guy was wide open in the flat in the end zone for that. But I think the Bills are going to be healthier. I do think they're going to be getting some key defenders back. I know Micah Hyde will be out for the rest of the year, but they were missing some players in their front seven, which made that a little bit more competitive a game. I think that those guys are going to be back healthy. And I think, like Will said, that Ravens secondary is just god awful. I mean, that they couldn't communicate between man to zone to whatever the hell they were trying to run. I think Buffalo has a real ability to go out there and light them up. So I'm taking the Bills by like 14. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel like it too. Will kind of beat me to it on that one, but I just feel like that's going to turn into one of these games where we get hyped up for a big quarterback battle, kind of like we were with the Aaron Rodgers Tom Brady matchup this past week, and it turned out to be a completely defensive slugfest. Where no one wanted to move the ball very well, and everyone wanted to get a penalty every time they did move the ball. But yeah, so I've got Buffalo too in this one. So looking down the board here, I'd say the other two biggest games this week, we'll start out with this one. Kansas City traveling to Tampa Bay. Another matchup, which is, meant for primetime quarterback play. What do we think here? I think I started with Will last time, so Corey, I'll go to you first this time.
Kind of similarly to, at least with the Bills, I think the Chiefs are a top 3 team. I think they're an elite football team, and I think coming off whatever that Colts game was, these good teams bounce back. I think they're a better team than the Bucs straight up. I think coming off a loss just kind of hammers and reinforces that they're going to come back better like the Bills are. Because that Colts team, I mean, we talked about it last week. That is a horrible football team. They didn't look good. So it just looked like one of those weird weeks for the Chiefs where I don't think they compound on their mistakes. I think they come back, and I think they have a big win, actually. I think they win by maybe 2 touchdowns.
Gotcha. And I did forget to mention that the Chiefs are favored by 2 right now going into Tampa Bay. Will, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a super close game. The teams match up well. It's a really good Tampa defense that didn't necessarily play that well in the first half last week, but sort of came around a little bit later. And the Chiefs offense is what it is. The Chiefs defense, not really super duper. And the Tampa Bay offense right now has been super disappointing. So I feel like that just yields a close game. And you can't, the both quarterbacks are really good at close game football. Maybe the Chiefs just have a little bit more firepower to finish out the game. So I'll take the Chiefs in a very close game.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's going to be another dogfight. I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw this past week between Green Bay and Tampa Bay. Honestly, I think both teams are going to struggle to move the ball at times. And honestly, with the Steelers playing early last week, this was the first week I got to watch the Colts and another team kind of more up close. And honestly, I just wasn't very impressed with the Chiefs. Because there is no Tyreek Hill, I don't feel like they can go vertically. And for some reason, they have refused to use Valdez Scantling in a vertical role. And it's like, man, that's what you signed him for, right? So it's like right now, I feel like the Chiefs are this team that, yeah, we're really good at dinking and dunking, but when we play a really good defense that's going to make that style of offense very tough, every down, I think that's where, they're going to be exploited, where the Colts kind of did that a few times last week. They didn't allow them to, make a ton of big plays or whatever. And I understand, I feel like the Chiefs beat themselves more than the Colts won last week. I mean, how many special team snafus can you have in one day? Good Lord. I thought the Danny Smith Steelers were bad at some point, but I mean, that was just bad. Sky Moore had 2 horrific misjudges on punts and with the muff, and then the one he let bounce all the way down to the 1. So I actually like Tampa Bay. I just feel like how often has Tom Brady lost back-to-back games? There's a stat there, and I can tell you it's not very often. I don't have that exact stat, but I can probably count on one hand how many times he's lost back-to-back football games. I just don't see that happening. I think Julio Jones might be back this week. So I like Tampa Bay. I like Tampa Bay with an outright win here. Last one, I think that's probably the most interesting game this week is the Rams are going to San Fran. And Garoppolo certainly didn't look super sharp in his first return in big action, but the Rams haven't exactly looked the sharpest at it either at times this year. Will, let's throw this one out to you right now. San Fran is favored by 2.5. So who wins the Battle of California this weekend?
I don't even know where to begin to try to pick this game.
I wanted to throw one real, wrench into this, and I felt like this was probably the hardest one to predict of all the ones we've had. So,
yeah, I don't know. I guess I will say that in some ways, I think that the Niners are maybe playing a better brand of football right now, but geez, Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know. I guess take the Rams. I mean, I just total gut call. I have no idea why. I feel like the Rams just are due compared to the 49ers, with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know. I have no feel for either of these teams. Talk to me about them in like 3 weeks. I have no idea. I hope you guys have a better feel than I do.
Yeah, Corey, let's go to you then.
I think my feel is that Jimmy Garoppolo stinks. And I think Matthew, I think he's horrible at football. That's how I really feel. But I think I'm going the Rams just because they have Matthew Stafford instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think either team's very good. Right? Neither team's look very good. They don't look like very complete football teams. But I think the Rams have the better quarterback, and I think that's why I'm going to go the Rams.
Gotcha. Well, unfortunately, it sounds like we're all going to agree on this one. I like the Rams too this week, and I think part of it is because if San Fran is still missing Trent Williams and they're down to their backup offensive lineman, that were late in that game against Denver the other night, and if Eric Armstead also doesn't play this week, I'm not exactly sure if he's tracking to play or not. Is a little early in the week to know for absolute 100% certainty. But I feel like if those players are missing, I feel like the Rams have more than enough to overcome that. And they did kind of seem to get back to a run game this past week. Cam Akers did look pretty good. Cooper Kupp. I mean, top 3 receiver in the game right now. Stafford's definitely the better quarterback. I also just think the Rams defensive line, I think they might be able to have their way if San Fran's forced to play a lot of backup offensive linemen this week, even though I really do like San Fran overall. So I'm going to take the Rams as well to win and cover the 2.5. And then we have our 5-star matchup. Is the Jets are coming into Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is favored by 3.5 right now. We'll give you the first shot at this one.
Pittsburgh favored by 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a Steelers will cover and win this week, which will even their record and people will be rejoicing about the never had a losing season. That crowd is going to really celebrate this week's win. I'll call it actually a fairly big win for the Steelers, 24-13. I love the coaching staff in New York, and I like some of the pieces that they have, but they're just not quite there yet. I feel like they're sort of where Detroit was a year ago. And if the quarterback comes around, great. Maybe they'll be a little bit better than that by the end of the year. But right now, I just don't believe that they're going to go into Pittsburgh and win, even against a reeling Steelers team.
Boy.
I think the Steelers cover. I mean, the score I had in my head was 28-24, so that covers by half a point. I think the offense will roll like it did in the first half, and I think we might be able to sustain it a little better in the second half than we were against the Browns. Not a short week. I mean, home field makes a big difference. We have a long week. I mean, we have a lot of things in favor for us right now. I think 28-24. I think it might come down to a late drive where we have to score a touchdown with low time left. Have one of those miraculous Hail Mary swats that we had 4 times last year where we let the team get 30 yards in 10 seconds, and then chuck up a Hail Mary. But I think it'll be close. I think the Jets, like I said, I like their coaching staff. I like a lot of their pieces. I don't think they're there yet to face the Steelers on a long off a long break at home. I feel like it's just asking a lot of them right now. So Steelers 28-24.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh win too. For a lot of the reasons you said, Corey. We get the longer week to prepare, get a little bit more rest. I do like our matchups kind of across the board this week, which I don't think I'll be able to say that for the rest of the year. But I will say that for 1 week. And the score I had in my mind was 30-21. So we cover. We have some good drives, but we end up settling for some field goals here and there, and we get
30.
I know, shocker. We haven't seen those numbers since that was a goal from the Big Ben led offenses a few years back. But I just think we've got some advantageous matchups. I think we take care of them. The Jets just don't scare me quite yet. But that's why I have it more as a 30-21 game, is where they do have some success moving the ball here and there and get some, and they do put up their points, but just not enough to come in Pittsburgh to win.
I don't know. I just have this, the Steelers have played so bad against the Jets the last few years. It wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't work out the way that we're all thinking, even though I think our logic is sound.
Nothing will surprise me this Pittsburgh Steeler football season. Everything's on the table every minute of every game. That's how I'm attacking it this year. So I can't be too high, too low, somewhere in the middle. It's a spectrum that I can live with all year long if I play it like that. So, with that being said, so we're all predicting a Pittsburgh win. Hopefully that translates to the field. SteelerFury.com members. Last words, Corey, I'll let you start first.
I think I'm going to lose my mind if we don't throw George Pickens more quote unquote 50-50 balls. We've thrown him one all year. He had an outstanding catch of the year play. And then for the rest of the game, we don't throw it to him. It's beyond logic. It really is. So I'm just hoping that we throw at least one. I would hope for 3 or 4 since it clearly works. He clearly has an advantage, but that's really just all I'm hoping for. I just want to see some balls thrown up to him.
I'm not sure logic exists in Canada's offensive playbook or dictionary, but well,
no logic, only split zone.
A split zone, man, on play one. It's coming. Just to follow up on your Tom Brady note, if Brady loses this week, bet the farm that he will beat the Falcons. That only lost more than 2 games in a row once in his career. That was 2002. He lost 4 in a row, but otherwise he's not lost 3 in a row since then, and he probably won't do it again this year, especially against the Falcons. It's kind of like Belichick had that thing going for him last week, where he hadn't started 0-2 in any season in New England. So last year was, the game against the Steelers was very unlikely that Belichick's going to go 0-2 since he never does. If you believe in that sort of thing. Anyway, that's mainly it. Try to enjoy the Steelers game if they're able to have a smooth victory, because it may be the last one for a while looking at the schedule. So let's, savor it and enjoy it, and not try to think too hard about what it means for the future. That's my advice.
Yeah, we could be looking to the future quite a lot in the next coming weeks, months. But kind of along your lines, hopefully we can enjoy some footballs, and then not along your lines too. I kind of had this random thought while we were talking here. It's been pretty consistent that Thursday night football has been sloppy, less than desirable football kind of here. Well, why in the world has the NFL not come up with an algorithm that would schedule a bye week before a Thursday night game to where it's like the team would have 2 long periods and with a game in the middle? Like how has the NFL not come up with something like that at this point? Like, shit, you could start probably playing some teams on Wednesday if you went to that model. Hey, NFL, another money-making opportunity. Who wants to watch some Wednesday night football? Try to get every night of the week. Why not? Screw it.
Why do the Steelers start on away every week, every year? They start an away game with it for every year. It's like there's
Well,
no
the scheduling conflicts with the Pirates games that are packed out.
Yeah, so packed. Yeah, because they really have a really hard time moving. They could play that
That's
game
what
in
it
the
is.
parking lot and have enough room.
With that being said, guys, thank you for another week here coming together so we can talk about our favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go get them, Pittsburgh. Let's get a good win at home, an ugly win, whatever type of win you want to label it. Go Steelers.
Enjoy your football.